Kia ora tātou, nau mai, haere mai, and look, welcome everybody to our council meeting, hearings and annual budget for Tuesday the 16th of May 2023. Before I get into our items, if I could ask the Deputy Mayor to open, please. Karakia.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor, o tira, tēnā tātou. In saying this karakia, which is a karakia about the energy and the enthusiasm and the motivation of everyone gathered, that we look to each other for strength, that we look to each other for unity in making our environment a better place. I'd also like to acknowledge this karakia and offer that for those who are affected by the fire in Wellington this morning. Ka pai. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho, kia taua ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And look, if I could welcome everybody again to this meeting, just explain it's being recorded, it's being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. In terms of health and safety, as we have a number of members of the public in the gallery, and welcome to you all. We'll get that up on. Unlike the event of an emergency on hearing the alarm, please leave the site via the nearest green signed exit, and we evacuate to the assembly area next to the clock tower in the square Te Marae Hine. It's a non-smoking facility and the toilets are in the link span as you entered. Again, unlike the event of needing a defibrillator, that is located downstairs at the front of the house on the ground floor. Any incidences, please report them to our committee administration. Right, again to anybody in terms of speaking, please, if you could just mention your our staff presenting, if you could just give your name before speaking in the microphone. We have a number of councillors online. We have Councillor Leonie Harpiter and Councillor Karen Naylor. And our first order of business is apologies. And I'd like to move that we resolve to receive the apologies from Councillors Rolly Fitzgerald and Councillor Vaughan Dennison. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Just wait for a bit of technology to catch up. And I'll ask you to vote, please. Just a moment, we'll get there. Okay, if you could vote, please. And it's passed 14 votes for and none against. Thank you. Number 3 on our agenda items is notification of additional items. Item 16, which is around remits to local government 2023 AGM, Annual General Meeting. And we are looking to move to receive the late item for the following reasons. The remit was received after the agenda was published, and the reason for the urgency is our colleagues at Hamilton have requested a response from councils, including ourselves, by Friday the 19th. I'm happy to move that we accept that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and councillors, we won't discuss this straight afterwards. We'll look to move that business till tomorrow. So we're just voting on the reason why if we're going to accept it. So if I could ask you to vote, please. And that is passed, 14 votes for and none against. Thank you. Number 4 in our order papers is declarations of interest. I haven't received any, and nothing from the floor. We'll move on. And to number 5, which is on page 7 of your papers, and this is a petition from Mr. Ian Duncan, and welcome Ian, and invite you, Ian, to come up. And this is around excessive use of motorbikes on the Mangoni Stream walkway.
Good morning. My name's Ian Duncan. I've been a resident of Strawn Way for 7 years. We are being plagued with motorcycles using the walkway behind our property. It's becoming quite a problem. These trial bikes are using it as a shortcut from Amberley Avenue through to Pioneer Highway. This is happening at all hours of the day and night. I've heard bikes go through there at 2 in the morning. I've heard bikes come through there at 6 in the morning. 6 in the morning. We have rung the council many times, and my complaint is I can never get past the receptionist. I've asked the receptionist at the council for a person's name or phone number so I can relate this problem, and they always tell me, we will get back to you. I've done this for 18 months, nothing has happened. It is also happening at Brookside Close on the opposite side of the walkway. Peter Ayres has been laying complaints for some time as well. One way this can be resolved, there was a turnstile down behind the trotting course, which the said trail bike riders have smashed down so they can ride right through from Amberley Ave to Pioneer Highway. Now that was a very solid construction, but they've managed to smash that all down and throw all that timber in the creek. That happened probably 18 months ago, and now they can ride straight through. They come through at speed. We've rung the police, and the police say to us, give us a description, give us a registration number. The people that are doing this know that people in Strawn Way and Brookside Close object to it, so they ride through there at high speed. So by the time we hear them, they're gone. It is a waste of time calling the police because they're gone and won't see them again for hours on end. Where they go to after riding through our area, I presume they go through and down towards the river. Now, we have had one child killed on the walkway approximately 2 years ago, and we had a policeman down off Maxwell's Line who was injured trying to apprehend a motorcyclist at 2 in the morning. This track is used regularly by the general public, people walking dogs, women with pushchairs, little toddlers. Just around the corner from us is a blind bend. If someone comes around there on a motorcycle at speed, someone is going to get hurt. And that is our main complaint. If that turnstile was replaced, it would be a waste of time building one in timber. They'll smash it down again. If a decent, solid turnstile was put back in place, it would probably eliminate half the problem. that is my main complaint.
Thank you, Mr Duncan. So we have a couple of questions. So in terms of the turnstile or the barrier, you feel it needs to be more substantial than just a wooden structure?
Yes. The wooden structure that was there, the posts that were set in the ground were 100 by 100 posts, big solid posts. They've managed to rip them all out of the ground and throw the whole lot in the creek.
Right.
So it's taken a fair bit of effort, but that's what they've done.
And you've contacted our officers around the turnstile?
I've tried to contact somebody from Parks and Reserves, but the receptionist just tells us, we'll get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. I've opened up a lot of questions. All right. Councillor Harper online.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Duncan, for coming in. Just a question. If we had something like what was at the Esplanade, not as grand as that, but like a locked gate that an officer had to come and lock it at night and open it up, would that kind of meet the purpose of what you're talking about, so that it was opened up during the day and then closed off at night? Would that meet the purpose, Mr Duncan?
No, it wouldn't. They're there during the day, they're there late at night, they're there early in the morning. It doesn't happen all the time, but you know, every now and then the bikes come through. And of course they're riding this track with no lights. They're only trail bikes. And someone will get hurt.
When
Thank you.
Ian
Thanks, Mr.
tried to talk to them one day, they just about ran him over. They came to inches of him, and they actually threatened him. They said they'd come back with a gun. Now, so you can't. You're very worried about what they're going to do, because they know who we are now and where we live.
One of the residents in Brookside Close laid a complaint to the cyclists, and they just abused him, and then a few nights later he got his front window smashed in in his lounge.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Ian, for coming in and bringing this to our attention. I know you've got reference there of a day and the number of bikes that were
Yes.
going backwards and forwards. In terms of the different types of bikes, do we have any idea of the numbers of people that might be actually involved in this?
It's probably only 2 or 3 bikes. Sometimes it might be one, sometimes it might be 2 or 3.
Yep, okay, thank you. And do these bikes have registration plates at all?
No registration plates.
Okay, thank you. And that cancels out my next question. No, thank you. Thanks,
And
Mr Mayor.
wearing full face helmets, we can't tell. We can't give you a description of who they are. And they go through so quick. They know that we're objecting, so they get past real quick.
Okay, no,
They
thank you.
often come through with children on their bikes with them. They have little ones in front of them while they're doing all this.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you both over this way for coming in to speak to us today. Hello. I know it's hard when there's so many of us. When you talked us through what's been going on, you said you've been complaining for the last 18 months, but you've
Yes.
been there for 7 years. So that sounds to me like this has got worse, but can you confirm for me that that's the case, that this is a more recent problem?
Definitely.
So when you first moved in 7 years ago, how would you describe the
Oh, there was
situation there?
nothing happening.
Nothing like that.
Uh-huh. Did you see bikes on the walkway then at all, or
Not very often, no, very rarely.
so it really has escalated
Yes.
recently?
Now, somebody did say to us there could be drugs, delivering drugs, but I mean, we can't prove that.
Some of the residents on our street are getting a bit reluctant to walk the track.
I saw you said that in your petition, people don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had a near rape behind us, but that wasn't the bikes. So it can be quite a dangerous place along there anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to share your concerns with us today.
Thanks.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Ian, for coming in. I'm over this side, just to confuse you.
Sorry.
That's right. Two questions. I'm very familiar with that track because I use it myself. When you're talking about Brookside Close, that's actually the track between Amberley Avenue and Highbury Avenue, isn't it?
Right, yes.
So are they having similar problems as well?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So how are the bikes getting onto their side?
They're coming in from, I think the culprits are in Robinson Crescent area,
Right,
and they're coming in a lot of times off Bill Brown Park,
right.
and
Yeah.
coming up onto the track and then motoring through.
Okay, so even if there's a turnstile at one end, there are lots of access points all the way along, aren't there? And I'm aware even on your piece, there's an access way
Yes.
that's stepped between, just before the blind bend, actually, isn't there?
That's where we live.
Yeah. So just fixing the turnstile at behind the trotting club, is that going to be enough to fix it?
It's going to help. It's going to help a lot. Probably 60 or 70% of the problem would go away because they can't ride right through.
Okay, so it's the need to get out at the other end that's
Yes.
stopping them. It's not just the racing up and down.
No.
And what kind of speeds do you think they're going at?
Oh, it's hard to say, but these bikes make a lot of noise,
Right.
and they certainly seem to be moving fairly quick. But yeah,
Are you aware of any collisions or anything?
not yet, but it'll happen.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll happen.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
All right, thank you, councillors. We've run out of time there, and I appreciate Mr. Duncan coming in and Mrs. Duncan. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. All right. So, councillors, we have the petition there. The council accepts or resolves to receive it for information. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. We've got a big, long line of items today, so I'm not going to comment. So we will just vote, please.
Thank you.
As passed, 14 votes for and none against. Right, we'll look to number 6 on our agenda, which is confirmation of minutes. And the minutes of the council meeting 3rd of May 2023, Part 1 public and Part 2 confidential, will be confirmed as a true and correct record. I'm happy to move those, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any matters arising? There being none, we'll look to vote, please. Just abstain. Okay, that's passed, 13 votes for. Thank you. Okay, the next part of the meeting is really around setting up the next 2 days with various appointments of chairs for the following sessions. So looking to resolve that the chairs for the remaining sessions be agreed as followed. Wednesday, tomorrow the 17th of May 2023 at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. the Deputy Mayor will chair. Later in the day at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Councillor Mickelard will chair, and then the evening session 5:30 to 7:30 Councillor Zabellin will chair. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Hancock. And we will vote, please. And that has passed 13 votes for and 1 abstention. We also need to have an extension of the meeting time until 8 p.m. on Wednesday. And that council, so I'd like to move that council resolves as per our standing orders, 2.1.7, that the meeting be extended until 8 p.m. on Wednesday, the 17th of May, 2023. I'll look to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. No matters arising. We will vote, please. And that has passed 14 votes for, none against. Thank you. Right, into the main part of the meeting business. Page 17 of your papers and our schedule for today, and I welcome all the submitters again. We look to the submitters, please. Your submissions have been read, and the procedure as you come up to the table here, please press the button there to get the microphone going. You'll have the traffic light system there. Green gives you your 7 minutes. We're then down to orange with like a traffic light system, 2 minutes on orange, and you're on the last bit, 1 minute on the red. We will stick relatively strictly to that because there is a number of speakers today, and we will then adjourn the meeting after our last speaker at 10:30. So the hearing of submissions that we have to resolve, the Council received the submissions on the draft annual plan budget 2023-24 and hear from presenters who wish to be heard in support of their submission. And number two, that Council note the procedure for the hearing of submissions as described in the procedure sheet. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. There be no matters arising. We will vote, please. Just check you voted. Has passed, 14 votes for, none against. Right, through to our first submitters, and this is submission number 45, and I invite Helen and Mads from our friends at Environment Network Manawatu. Welcome, and that's page 93 of your papers, councillors. Joined by Dave as well.
Yeah, we added an extra in Dave because he's going to be possibly useful. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Helen tōku ingoa, and I'm here with my colleagues Dave of the Manawatu Food Action Network and Mads, the coordinator of Environment Network Manawatu. As usual, thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's something that we truly do appreciate and like to take full opportunity of, as you probably will note by how often we are in council chambers. Our submission to the draft annual budget consultation for 23-24, just to acknowledge the incredible amount of mahi and dedication that has gone on from all council staff, getting this amazing document together and an understanding of, you know, how tricky it is to do this kind of thing. And what we came with in our submission are some things we support and some challenges and questions we have as well. Just to make clear to councillors as well that our submissions are done in collaboration with our 66 member groups, and as far as possible, what is on this paper reflects their views and their opinions as well. So we are very supportive of the work that's been done around cycleways, around reducing speed limits, and around the continuing high level of services linked to the provision of water, recycling and wastewater. We're also very supportive of what's going on with the implementation of a food waste collection service and the trials around this, which are a move in a good direction. However, one of the challenges we have here is the centralisation over the localisation of the food waste collection service. Compost can obviously be used as a valuable locally produced and locally used resource, and the Manawatu Food Action Network is currently doing some work around that if you have any questions about after I've spoken can be directed towards Dave. Our other areas of challenge and question are around what seems to be some reductions in budget, around climate change mitigation, around biodiversity and sustainable practices. Our question and challenge here is, over the last few months, we have seen really widespread damage and disruption caused by climate disruption. And our questions are, why are we putting less funding in here, if I'm reading that correctly, in the budget? It's essential that this is prioritised, we feel. If it's not happening now, it will happen at some point, and we need to be prepared for this. We also have questions around how little funding is put into eco-city priorities comparatively to other areas, and we would encourage increased investment in this. And linking to this, we do have questions as well about the concept of an environment hub being deprioritised for 23-24 and added to the 10-year plan. We constantly and frequently strongly advocate the fast tracking of this. It would be incredible to have an inspirational environmental centre for Orohi. It's something which is missing in our area that a lot of the bigger, more populous centres have. We don't necessarily have it. We have our wonderful centre at 145 Cuba Street, but we are fast growing out of that, and the community will be fast growing out of that space as well. We want to create a space that can model change, innovation, and offer support and information to guide people through the massive changes that are occurring in our lives right now and the things that they want to do to help mitigate these. Anything extra from my colleagues? Nailed it. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd appreciate any questions or comments back from councillors.
Great, thank you, Helen. And appreciate your quite substantive submission. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Environment Network team. A question about the Enviro Hub, which, as you know, has been suggested to be deferred. Can you just explain in a bit more detail why you think it's important that that goes into this year's budget and isn't deferred?
I think that the Environment Centre or an Enviro Hub has been talked about for a really long time, and that we as a centre, we already are a small environment centre, have actually struggled for capacity to formulate what that actually looks like and to share that effectively to this table or to anyone else. And so where I think the current kind of priority should be, and in the short term, would be to have some resourcing allocated to really firm up what that would look like, what's required, almost like a, not a feasibility study, that's not the right word for it, but what is it that the environment community has been looking for, and what is it that we can share, and to have some resourcing around pulling that together so that then it's in time for, say, a long-term planning process or whatever the next part is.
Oh, that's very helpful, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question's around the reduction to the climate change mitigation budget, and I'll leave this to you to determine where it best goes. I just wanted to ask, and I apologise if it's obvious to my colleagues, but is this a reduction of an increase to 258,000, or is it a reduction of the total budget to 258,000?
Are you asking us?
Probably best directed at somebody in our officer team, if we know.
Yeah, I think we would need to come back on that one just to look at the detail. I don't think we have that in front of us to answer it just at this point. Sorry.
Right, thank you, appreciate that.
Councillor Isabellin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a couple of questions for you. One relating to your comment about the Eco-City goals and sort of relative underinvestment comparative to the other goals. I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about where you think the most investment is needed under the Eco-City goals, or what's lacking?
Good question.
Thanks. Thanks, Katie.
It's an interesting one because I'm struggling to categorise that, because our work with the environment is just so intertwined with absolutely everything that it's hard to actually put a value of it. But it just, when you're reading that document and you see Eco-City priorities and it's so low, it just speaks something to me that it's not a priority, no matter where else it is. So it's that value and how it's looked on paper to me that makes me go, okay. For somebody who reads the budget, I see little bits of investment dotted in different places, but to the average person who's just reading the core document, doesn't look great for something that you have put in your plan as a very big priority.
Thank you. And my second question was about the composting and the food waste being centralised rather than localised. And I'm also keen to hear your thoughts on how that could be done better.
Yeah, we're excited that the Palmerston City Council has started a trial curbside composting thing, and we absolutely toe-talk that. But we, at the same time, we acknowledge that that is a resource that's leaving that community and going to a central hub, which is inherently inefficient. We would love, side by side with that, to have localised composting schemes where people who live in a certain community can compost their food scraps and green waste together and harvest, reap the rewards of that themselves. So we're working very closely with Jonathan Hannon from Massey University, who's a compost guru, on creating a sustainable, localised composting program.
That's great.
To add to that, I think that it gives, like a localised version has much more benefits, or a community-led version has, like, while both versions will compost the food, and that's all good, that actually the added benefits of a community-led and community-involved scheme are things like education and upskilling and food resilience and less transport.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Just wondered, around the Enviro Hub, can you give us some specific examples of programs or activities that could be delivered out of a, let's say, a proper Enviro Hub that you would be struggling to deliver out of your Cuba Street premises?
Yep. We could be doing more like recycling. I know that the council does recycling, but like community-led recycling programs, and upcycling type things, a food waste kitchen, education hub, or a food waste cafe or something like that. We're looking at a precious plastics project at the moment, and that will need housing if that goes ahead. That's a community engaged model of breaking down little plastic lids and turning them into artworks and selling them. There's more, sorry.
Just to be honest, all the stuff that we're doing now, you know, all our hui's have to be in other places. Things are stored at different people's houses, which if they were in this centre would be more convenient for us, but the public could also see them as well. Things like the Ruahine Kiwi project, some of the amazing traps that are being built and sourced for those as well. Those are things that would raise public discussion about this really, really valuable project that's going on. The fact that we are so dispersed makes us less visible in our tiny space. A larger, all-encompassing space that would allow us to do all of that would bring things like the eco-city priorities very much to the forefront.
And the other thing is a potential model for, you know, an environmentally sound buildings and what that can mean for cities. So like, you know, passive heating and solar power and, you know, and how that looks in people's houses. And so creating a model or a space for people to see that in action.
Ka pai. Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Look, thanks, Helen. Thanks, Mads. Stay there, Dave, because you're next up. Submission number 44. And is Daniel joining you, or is it just you?
Maury's unwell.
Okay. All right. Floor is yours, Dave.
Kia ora, Mr. Mayor. Tēnā koutou to the councillors that I haven't met. Really excited about talking with you guys here. We talked with you last year and about exactly the same thing, and you guys accepted the submission that we put in. Unfortunately, for some reason, I'm back here again to do the same thing again. So in 2021, I was engaged by a group called Order Connect to write the 4412 Kai Resilience Strategy. And in the discovery stage of that, through talking with whānau, we discovered that there's about 10,000 people living with food insecurity in the 4412 area of Palmerston North. So that's not the whole of Palmerston North, just the postcode on this side of the city. And through that discovery, we also talked with people about creating a plan to create food resilience in our city, and we identified 115 different projects that are the dreams of the people living in the 4412 to create food sovereignty for themselves. That 10,000 number has gone up despite our best efforts. The last 2 years we've been working really hard on food resilience projects in the city, and we've been really successful. But it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the coming food crisis that is about to hit our area is only going to make it worse. There are more people living with food insecurity now than there were 2 years ago, through factors that you all know about. So we really asked the City Council to take a lead in this. The work that's been done by Order Connect in the 4412 area of the city has been incredibly successful. But now we have to look at the entire city. And as you guys, as kaitiaki of the city, we think it's a human right that everyone has access to good quality and a good quantity of food. And as the guardians, we need to put a statement that that is a priority for us as a people, as a whānau. So we're asking the City Council to accept our submission to create a Kai Resilience policy for the city, so that we can unlock the potential of the city and show the love to the people that need it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Councillor Finlay.
Dave, just over side here. With your food resilience and people going without food or lacking food, have you found there any increase in that area and among the older people in Palmerston North?
Absolutely. It's, as you know, Lou, it's the people on the margins that always suffer the most. And the war in Ukraine, Cyclone Gabriel, COVID has always hurt the people on the margins of society, the people that are struggling, and people on fixed incomes struggling more. You're paying 6 to 7% more for your food this year than you were 2 years ago.
So you have noticed that?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Isabella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Dave. A couple of questions from me. Since you've been rolling out the 4412 Kai Resilience Strategy, have you yourself observed the increase in the sort of interest in food production or the need for food production in that community?
Absolutely. Last week we held the first Manawatu Community Garden Alliance Hui, and we had 70 people turn up to it, everyone paddling in the same direction in the same waka, talking about growing food for the community. everywhere we go, we are meeting people that do have the dream of growing their own food and supporting their own whānaus through healthy, delicious kai.
That's great, thank you. So I'm also curious about what kind of stories are you hearing from these people on the margins who are experiencing food insecurity?
Yeah, so last week Mads and I had the displeasure of having a meeting with central government about the funding that we didn't get. But a story that came out of it was a beautiful woman who had come along to also present to the Ministry of Social Development that her son, who was suffering from severe mental health issues, through connection, we built a garden in their place, a marakai in their place, and that has been a tool for him to get out of the house and to get his hands into the whenua, and it was a real success story. We've got beautiful whānau living in Highbury who we've supported through growing food, through putting gardens in their places, and now this woman who is now a community leader in that area, a woman that was too whakamā to leave her house, is now leading her neighbourhood and growing food and sharing food with her neighbours. And I've got bucket loads of stories like that about the community coming together through food resilience and food sovereignty.
Thank you. And just one more from me. For your sort of vision for a citywide food security policy, is that perhaps using the 4412 strategy as a baseline and extrapolated out, or are you thinking that might have a bit of a different flavour?
Yeah, both answers are correct. The mahi we've already done, we've created a framework that could possibly work for the city, but we have to make sure that each community leads their own decision making in this process. So we do have to go back and ask the community in different places of the city what they want to do. There's no point in going over into Crew Crescent and telling them this is what we did in Highbury and it worked for us. It might not work in Crew Crescent, it might not work in Roslyn, so we do have to go back to the start again in some respect, particularly with the conversations.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
Councillor Barn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Dave, and supporting ACT. Dave, my question is around the discovery of the overlooking of the Kai Resilience strategy. I wanted to ask you what's the impact of that work slipping through the cracks last year?
Well, we're just another year behind, and that whole part of the city hasn't been looked after. There is no cohesive strategy to ensure people who are struggling in Roslyn and people who are struggling in Crew Crescent have the support they need to do what they need for their whānau. So we're just another year behind, yep.
Thank you. And you talk about communications with council about this. What's your understanding of what the next steps are going to be, having discovered that omission? Do we have to make that decision again? Is that what you're saying, or how's that going to be progressed?
Thank you, I can speak to that. My understanding was that there was a resolution made at this council to develop a food resilience policy, or to develop what it would take to develop a food resilience policy, and that should be included in this budget, and it has been omitted from this budget, and we'd like to see at least put back into the budget. I understood that you would have been told about this by council officers already, but we thought it best to submit to make sure that it gets back in the plan.
Okay, thank you for drawing that to our attention, and sorry that happened. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Dave. Just interested what you're hoping the policy will do.
I'm hoping the policy will unlock the resources of our city to focus on ensuring everyone in our city has fair and equitable access to quality and quantity of food that they need for their whānau.
And in terms of what council's role might be in that?
Council's the largest landowner in the city. There's lots of pockets of land in the city that would be absolutely superb for community gardens, for other projects for creating Kai Resilience, and also showing that the City Council has this as a focus, drawing attention, creating the momentum we need to help our community.
Great, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Dave. I think this does build on Councillor Barrett's questions, really. So in terms of scaling up the work that's been done in 4412, and if the policy was there as kind of an enabler of that, how do you envisage that the work could be scaled up across the city?
Well, we will identify through talking to whānau what their dreams are and creating projects to support them to create food resilience. I have mentioned more development of community gardens, more workshops on rediscovering the wisdom of our ancestors, of how we grew food and how we can look after ourselves, but also creating an environment where we're localising our food economy, creating a closed system where we're supporting people in our community to make food commercially. We live in the breadbasket of New Zealand. Within 2 hours of here, we grow enough food to feed 10 million people. There is no reason why anyone in our city should be hungry.
So does your group have capacity to scale this up?
No.
I guess that's what I'm interested in.
No, we do not have capacity.
Because a policy is one thing, but then are there any plans for how it can be achieved to scale up across the city at the moment? Or are you thinking that the policy is the first step and then the plans come after?
Do you want to speak to that?
Sorry, it's quite a tricky question.
Well, we don't have capacity in the current format, but with resourcing comes capacity. So, and I know that council can be scared of making a policy because you might think that then you're going to be required to resource into it. So I'm not wanting to scare you too much. But yes, there's lots of momentum, could we say, and desire from the community to be involved in food resilience work, in community conversations, and we don't have the current capacity to meet all of that. But we do work really collaboratively with other organisations across the city. So we're working with Nuvaka Trust and Te Tihi at the moment to try and build that capacity so that we can, so Nuvaka would be working on a Pacifica community garden, and we would be working on other community garden enablement and wider kind of what we call community champions across the city. So we're working towards it. The answer isn't completely no. Yeah.
No, that's good. And I think you've sort of answered that really you hope that there will be enabling of new community organisations and groups that will be able to do the work as well through that.
And I think the other point is that resourcing doesn't necessarily need to be money to specific organisations, but it can be the fact that because there's a policy at council level that all of the officers need to be aware of it. So it's not just the community development officers that know about, say, a community garden, but that there's that food policy is one of the key policies, and so it kind of sits across all of the work, and it's a real enabler as well, I believe.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, team. That's us done in terms of time. Now to our next submitter, submission number 57, Sarah Lawrence from Swimming Manawatu. It's page 119, councillors, of your papers. And I think we've got Ryan as well.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors, and thank you for having me again to speak to you today. So I'm here in my capacity as chairperson of Swimming Manawatu, and I just want to make a verbal submission to support the written submissions that you would have received regarding the draft annual budget. I guess I want to emphasise how critical it is that the proposed spend on aquatics facilities remains in the budget. I've got 3 key points that I really want to get across today. So the first is just to highlight the difference between swimming as recreation, which is what the majority of our facilities are suitable for at the moment, and swimming as sport. Competitive swimming requires one of 2 pool layouts, and World Aquatics, which is our swimming body, they provide detailed specifications on that. But essentially, it's one of two pool lengths, 25 metres or 50 metres, and lanes. My second point is concerning the most recent, what I've found, Manawatu Wanganui Regional Sports Facilities Plan. This is a decision-making document that's referenced on PNCC website, and it's my hope that with the current spend that is in the proposed budget, that this report will be significantly updated as a result of the needs assessment process that I believe is underway at the moment. The report actually states that in the Manawatu, we have 11 people per square metre of pool space, compared to a national average of 21 people per square metre. However, this is a gross misrepresentation. So I've actually printed out the report, and the facilities inventory that's included in the report and used to calculate those figures is a bit of a mockery, actually, in my opinion. It includes every puddle of water from Horowhenua right up to Ruapehu, and it's pretty much like saying that my backyard is a rugby training ground. They're not suitable for competitive swimming at all. Various reasons, and I've got the report here, and I've gone through and crossed out the ones that aren't appropriate. But a lot of these pools are significantly dated and were actually built in times where pools were measured in yards rather than metres. So there's a number of 30 metre pools, 33 metre pools, 23 metre pools, all of that sort of stuff. In addition, a large number of these pools actually aren't accessible by members of the public, let alone by the competitive swimming community. I've actually calculated accurate figures for comparison using our suitable public facilities only, and there's actually 45 people per square metre of pool space. Now, I actually went one step further, obviously bearing in mind that I'm talking to PNCC. If you included the fielding figures, population and the Makino pool, then the figure looks a bit better. It comes down to 31 people per square metre. However, both of those scenarios have assumed that all pools are available for use at any given time, e.g. all year round, which the 50 metre pool in both Fielding and in Palmerston North are not. Just as an aside piece of information for you, there's a recommendation for elite swimmers, and Ryan will talk to this soon, but 2 to 3 elite swimmers in a single lane for safety reasons, 1 to 2 elite swimmers in a lane for performance reasons, and it's not uncommon for swimming clubs in Palmerston North to be swimming with 8+ people in a lane at peak times. My last point is actually a challenge. I'm challenging the council to audit the success of the investment that's in the budget with regards to the arrangements with CLM managing our existing facilities, and to assess exactly how this arrangement is best serving our community. And I'm not just talking about our swimming community. And I'm also not talking about the CLM, the survey that CLM conduct themselves on behalf of the council. So that's a document that's given out at the front counter of the Lido and is collected by them and the information returned to you guys. With my understanding, and I haven't found any information to tell me otherwise, my understanding is that we, as a region, you councillors, we pay CLM a fee to use their facilities, but CLM are a profitable company. So that's a pretty good gig. I mean, if my landlord for our business were to pay me to occupy the premises, I'd be pretty stoked. CLM are also granted exclusive rights to offer Learn to Swim programs. Last time I sat here, actually, I think it was you, Councillor Barrett, I can't remember, but someone asked me about Learn to Swim, and at that time I didn't have a lot of knowledge, but I went away and found out. So our swimming clubs in Palmerston North are not allowed to offer Learn to Swim because CLM have exclusive rights to do all Learn to Swim programs in council-owned facilities. What's even more shocking is that I found a recent recruitment advertisement on one of their on one of our local social media pages, which stated, "You don't even need to know how to swim." Yeah. And then in addition to that, clubs are entirely prohibited from training and booking lanes at Freiburg. We're severely prohibited with bookings at the Lido. And there are pools that we just can't, there are times that we just can't access the pools altogether. So look, I think that, these points highlight why it's critical that the spend that's in the budget stays there and that it is spent. It's just far too important to not keep this aquatics project progressing. And the urgency, from my perspective, a really great example is the new pools that have been built in both Stratford and in Hawke's Bay. So they came about because they were prepared, and when central government had money for shovel-ready projects, they put their hands up and they were ready to go. So the spend that we've got budgeted now for needs assessment, it just has to go ahead. We've got to be in a position to better these facilities within the region. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, Sarah. I just wanted to ask a question. I've heard a lot of talk of covering the Lido outdoor pool, and my understanding is that's not an appropriate fix to what you're looking at. Would you mind just briefly talking us through why that is?
Yep, sure. Well, there's a couple of reasons, actually. I personally don't believe, and I've spoken to a lot of, my involvement with Swimming New Zealand and a lot of people that have been involved in new pools lately. I don't believe that it is going to come in at the cost that that CLM have advised that it will come in at. In addition, there's a number of different technical aspects that mean it's not going to be suitable for competition reasons. So it's a bit like putting a sticky plaster on at the moment, if you like. Yes, it will give us additional lane space through those winter months, but we've got a couple of issues. One, it's still under the guise of CLM, which means that we're still restricted to booking it for competitive swimming. Two is it's actually not surveyed, so whilst we will be able to use it for local swim meets, it's not going to attract anything else to the region. Three is the age, so we've actually had some incidents there, the age and condition of things like the diving blocks and all that sort of stuff needs some significant investment anyway. What else? We had a few reasons, didn't we? Yeah, so I guess that sort of gives you a bit of an example as to why that would be the case.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Sarah, for the presentation. I think one of my questions has already been answered through your explanations.
No worries.
Probably just a point of clarification. You mentioned in your submission that there is a monopoly to learn to swim.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to just expand more on that, just to clarify my understanding around that?
Yeah, sure. So we have a number of swimming clubs, I think off the top of my head, 9 or 10 swimming clubs in the region, and those are led by qualified swim coaches through the New Zealand. There is an appropriate accreditation that swimming coaches are given. We are not allowed to offer any learn to swim programs in any of the council-owned facilities because, as I understand it, there is an agreement between council and CLM giving them the exclusive right to do that. So what that means, some clubs attempt to do a little bit of a workaround, but essentially by the time we take on kids, they need to be able to swim 25 metres. So, for example, accessing what you would call the learn to swim pool, that smaller puddle that's at the Lido. So we're not allowed to use that. In addition, we're not allowed to run programs on, say, Saturday mornings, because Saturday mornings is when the Learn to Swim programs are in operation, so we don't have access to any of those pools. We have, just to give you an idea, I've seen swimmers that have come over to us from Learn to Swim who are unable, after spending for up to 5+ years in that program, so some 9-year-olds who still can't swim 25 metres and who are barely capable of blowing bubbles, let alone putting together a full stroke. So, I actually think that that's a little bit of a mockery of the parents that pay a significant fee for those kids to go to those programs, thinking that they're giving them lifelong skills. They're just not.
Okay, I apologise to my colleagues, but there's a lot of you in the queue. We've just run out of time. Thank you, Sarah. But Ryan, submission number 59 on page 121 of your papers, councillors. Ryan, if you'd like to add anything else to your submission.
Good morning, Council. So just trying to build on a bit of what Mum said about trying to keep spending in for pools. So I'm a competitive swimmer myself, so kind of just speaking from someone in the water a bit. So with current facilities, there's a lot of kind of issues to say that just kind of, There's a bit of a lack of lane space at the moment, so meaning not enough pools compared to swimmers. I think Mum said a bit about that. But from my experience, I have to be training quite late at night, so my trainings can often go from 6 till 8 o'clock at night, and by the time I get out of the pool and dressed and get home, I'm often not home till 8:30, having dinner and ready to chill out by 9 o'clock, even later. So that can cause quite a few issues for me. And then there's also the issue of competition times. We are restricted to having our competitions on Sundays, between Sunday afternoons, just because we cannot get the pools to be able to have these competitions, with the exception of, I think it's 2 meets a year, which we are able to hold in the 50-metre pool at the Lido. But other than that, we are restricted to Sunday afternoons. So that can cause quite an issue. And then with those same competitions, we are often restricted to only 250 swimmers out of, I think it's 1,100 in the region. So and then we are also, on top of that, only told that we can enter 4 events maximum, which there's normally 4 or more events per stroke. So at the end of the day, we are highly restricted on the amount of races we can do, and then the amount of events and actual competitions we can actually swim in. Then there is, moving on to training. So when I'm actually at training, we have to deal with overcrowded lanes. So for my swim squad, we have normally about 2 lanes a night for training, and each lane can have 6 or more swimmers in them if we're running with average amount of swimmers. And as Mum said, I think it was 2 to 4 elite swimmers in a lane for optimal training, but we're running with 6 or more. And so that can make things quite uncoordinated. There can be a bit of crashing into each other, as I'm quite a taller fellow, so I can reach from each side of the lanes and hold each lane rope. So when I'm doing the likes of butterfly, I can often end up smacking into people if I'm not careful. And so having 6 or more people in the lane compared to 2 or 4, you can imagine that would make things quite difficult. And then with overcrowding, there can also be people swimming over each other, and there's all different speed levels and stuff. So yeah, that can make things a bit uncoordinated. There is also there is only 2 50-metre pools in the region, to my knowledge, and both are only open for under half a year annually, which can be, so just kind of moving back to the lack of lane space, there's, the 50-metre pools are really not enough of them, and means that we can't really be training in them very much, which, and the 50-metre pool at the Lido is pretty good, but it's a shame as we can only use it, I think it's roughly 4 months a year, which isn't really adequate, and the fielding pool isn't really adequate for training either. They have bad blocks for diving depth that's really shallow, and so it can be a bit of a hazard almost when diving, and it means when you do tumble turns at the other end as well, I often find myself smacking into the floor, which isn't very fun. And then that kind of moves on to the 25-metre pools that we do have as well, also very shallow, and so the pool I train at the Lido, it's the 25-metre pool. The shallow end is quite shallow, so once again doing turns and stuff, I find myself hitting the floor, and the tiles on the floor of it as well are actually sharp, and on the walls and sides, so I often find myself getting cuts on my feet when doing turns, etc., and so that can be, as you'd imagine, quite a pain. So realistically, what we would need would be a good 50-metre pool up to World Aquatic standards to be able to have good trainings and be able to hold more kind of top-tier competitions, more or less. So yeah, that'd be good. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Thank you. Ron, you partly answered my question, because I used to be a competitive swimmer back in the days of 33 and a third. But in my mind, I'm just trying to imagine a lane with 6 elite swimmers trying to do a butterfly sprint at different times, and I just don't know how you can do it.
Yeah.
Even backstroke would be tough.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Well, that's a very good question. There is a lot of trying to dodge each other, so a couple times you could get a bit lucky and just kind of miss each other with different timings, but other than that, you normally have to do a half stroke or a breaststroke pull when you're going past someone, which, as you can imagine, when you're trying to train for butterfly, isn't exactly ideal. Yeah, so
in the lane, you would have a whole lot of people doing butterfly or the same stroke or different strokes?
well, that can depend, but a lot of the time, if one person's doing butterfly, quite often, yes, the rest of the lane would be also doing butterfly.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Meehan.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Ryan. You touched on what my question was going to be about. I've heard before athletes getting cut when they're training. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Is that a common thing with a lot of the athletes?
Well, yeah, I've seen it happen quite a bit before. So it's just the tiles on the poles, they're about yay big, and the corners of them are really sharp. So when a swimmer comes in to do their turn and their feet hit the wall, kind of coming down on an angle, they can hit the points and they just go straight through the skin, because you've got soft skin from being in the pool for a couple hours. And it just slices straight through, and it's a relatively common occurrence. So I've had it happen to me. So I've had a bleeding cut a couple times, but then just slices in general on the foot are quite common.
Is that common, or is that a maintenance issue?
Could be a maintenance issue, but I think it could be the fact that the pool is maybe just a bit old or outdated. It's just not really adequate. It's the type of tiles that has been used to make it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so a bit of both, to answer your question.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Ryan, and also Sarah for earlier. Ryan, you mentioned that there were 1,100 swimmers. Are they competitive swimmers, and only 250 of those are allowed in a meet, so there's a ceiling placed on that. Is that right?
Yeah, so the 1,100 are all competitive swimmers, and the 250 is the cap put on your average meet for...
It's actually only 200, sorry, as well. Yeah, if anything above that is just a health and safety risk at the facility, it's not capable of holding more.
Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, you mentioned about the times, like the shortage of lanes available for the competitive swimmers is actually pushing out at the top, so you're getting home late and having to use it. I suspect that would be early in the morning too. Would that precipitate the need to start early in the day?
So swimmers around the world normally swim train at early hours, but we would like to do that, but we simply cannot get lanes. So yeah, the lanes are booked from really early in the morning at the pools where you can actually get them at those early hours. Where the pools are actually open at the early hours.
Some clubs are early morning. Ryan's particular club is not able to get any early morning lane access.
What's the earliest you could get into the pool that you go to?
4:30, maybe.
And most of those 1,100 swimmers, competitive swimmers, are school age?
Yes.
Yeah, that number is just our school age. Yeah, doesn't include masters or juniors.
Thank you. And my final question is, what's the best swimming facility you've seen when you've gone away to the meets?
When I've gone away to meets, well, probably up in Hawke's Bay. Hawke's Bay have a really nice 50-metre pool that's got electronic timing and FINA approved blocks and everything, and it's really good. And so there's a couple good ones in Wellington, and I think there's a nice one in Stratford. But
thank you very much.
The best one I've seen is in Melbourne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Great. Look, thank you, Ryan. We've run out of time. Sorry, colleagues. Okay, we're now to Tim and Justin. And Te Pū Harakiki, our community council or collective. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Morning, councillors. My name is Tim Kendrew, manager Te Pū Harakiki Community Collective Manawatu. Had to change council because we kept getting confused with you guys. This is Justin, our program coordinator, and I'm going to let him do the talking.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello to all the councillors and everyone here. We are here to speak behalf of the community and social sector. Like E&M, we are also a member organisation. We have over 100 members from the social and community sector. All the things that we talk about also reflect their views. We've had things like last year, such as the Social Wellbeing Forum, where we got the community together and different surveys and interviews and stuff like that to get their thoughts. First and foremost, I would like to thank Council for the ongoing support to the sector as reflected in the budget, especially around housing. Housing to us is still the most pressing need in the social and community sector. So in January 2020, the median rent was $380 a week in Palmerston North. That rose up to $450 in January 2022 and $550 now. If you look at different reports, that number may be higher and rising. This is a very real issue for us, and it's quite heartbreaking. So just to make it vivid to everyone, paint a picture. Imagine a single mom coming into Hancock House with their child who have just been kicked out of the home because the landlord has asked for unreasonable demands, the rent has gone up, maybe they come from an abusive household, and meanwhile they're eating literally a jar of mayonnaise for dinner that they got from Just Zilch. This is quite a common issue that we see in Palmerston North, and especially in Hancock Community House. But when we go and try and refer them to one of our housing organizations, because they've been directed there from MSD or other government bodies, they have to wait 2 weeks because our sector is understaffed. And to that effect, I know Council is well aware about how hard it is to find qualified staff. I understand this isn't just an issue in our sector, but just to highlight it. This is very much an issue for us. I have spoken to organizations who have advertised for a whole year for specialized counselors, and there isn't anyone within New Zealand, basically, that would apply. And the reasons for that are multifold. First and foremost is because we're competing with the private sector and overseas and other cities, and we simply cannot compete. Someone working within our sector can easily be offered twice the amount doing the same job somewhere else. And of course, when you're looking at issues as emotionally charged and difficult as ours, it can take a strain on you. The members of our sector are very empathetic, but they're also human. And they're also dealing with all the other issues that are affecting our clients, such as, again, housing, cost of living, mental health, and so on. So they also need to look after themselves. Again, we thank Council for your ongoing support. We would really like Council to continue looking at everything through a well-being lens, because from our perspective, at the end of the day, no matter what strategy we use to employ locally, at the end, it's the people that matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Tim. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Justin and Tim. Just wanted to go to your written submission, the final point, which is one of the recommendations from the Social Wellbeing Forum. Explore ways to streamline or coordinate housing support agencies to ensure a single, clear, accessible contact channel. What would you see, what are the expected benefits of that?
I think, well, just taking a step back, the problem that we see that's led to this recommendation is that the organisations working in this space, and there are many wonderful organisations working in this space, don't seem to have the capacity, really probably to do with staffing. There's been other challenges, obviously, going on over the last few years. But we, in part of our role as managing Hancock House and manning the reception there, see so many people coming in that just don't know where to turn, and are sent from organisation to organisation, in particular in this housing space, to find a solution. And we don't think there's just an easy way for somebody who doesn't know where they're sleeping tonight or tomorrow night just to go and get the information, the support they need. They'll go to MSD, and MSD will send them to the Housing Advice Centre. Housing Advice Centre, due to their capacity constraints, may not be able to see them for 2 weeks. And we have to send them back to MSD, and MSD may be closed by then, and it just goes around in circles. That's really the challenge there.
Thank you. Can I follow up then to ask perhaps an obvious question, but you've included it in the submission to council. So is that a signal to us as council that you have a view that we have a role in helping achieve that, or why have you brought that to us?
I do think the council has a role. Partly it's included because of the conversations that have been happening about a night shelter and linking into that. Partly it's included because you're a major funder of the sector, and so ensuring that some of those organisations that receive strategic priority grants from the council are resourced to be able to meet their capacity needs. And partly it's that the council and the community development team in particular have good oversight of the sector, and so may be able to take a lead in helping to encourage that kind of coordination, because there seems to be a little bit of a gap in that space.
Thank you, those are helpful. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'll just jump in actually, because thanks, Councillor Barrett. So what role do you think the government plays?
I would say a similar role. We at Te Pū Harakeke probably have less oversight or kind of insight into the relationships that are going on there, purely because of with the space that we're working in. So I can't necessarily comment on that too much, but I think in the same way, funding the sector to help meet those needs we see as a central government responsibility as much as it is a local government responsibility. But it's easier to get in front of you. And you know the local issues, I think, is really the thing here.
So perhaps government funding either us or you to carry out that role, you think might be a better way of doing it?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Finlay.
Thank you. Back to housing again, and this morning's news really affected me. For years I worked with an organisation that had a large boarding house in this town. And it occurred to me, what would happen if some of the larger boarding establishments in the city had that sort of incident and were closed down? What would we as a city have to support those people who had lost their accommodation, if anything?
To be honest, I'm probably not best placed to answer that, given that we don't necessarily work right on the front line in that housing space. I mean, the community sector rises to meet needs when they come. We saw it through COVID. We see it every time there's an emergency. So I have no doubt that the housing sector and the community sector would rise to meet those needs, but it would be a challenge. I mean, we all know that housing is in short supply, continues to be in short supply no matter, there's been some progress in that space, but it continues to be too little supply for demand, and so of course that kind of event would have a massive impact.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Justin and Tim. I'm just interested to explore the problem of staff attraction and retention in community organisations. So have you done a deeper dive into the issues there? Because Justin, I think, mentioned wages and also, stress of working in the sector. So is it about being competitive on the wage front primarily, or is it something else?
I think it's a mixture of things. I know you've seen the report from the Social Wellbeing Forum, and one of the questions we asked people to discuss was how can we improve retention and attracting staff? And the most common answer there was about pay. There was a lot of comments about, improving culture and wellbeing kind of focus as well. And I think to a large extent, community organisations being able to focus on those things also comes from being better resourced, feeling like they have the time to invest into, staff wellbeing or training. That's a space obviously that we work in a lot, and it's a challenge to convince people to take a step back from the front line to focus on their staff's wellbeing or training because they're so short-staffed. So, it just goes around in circles, to be honest. But I think the largest one is wages, and being able to fill vacancies really is the challenge at the moment.
Can you give us an example of the degree of the pay gap that you're looking at?
If I was more prepared, I probably could have, but I don't want to jump off the top of my head, do you know?
I mean, anecdotally, I know, I don't have the proper statistics, but for example, in the housing space, we have had people who have left the space and gone on to jobs in other sectors, but more or less doing the same job for almost twice the wage.
Okay. In terms of an hourly rate, you mean, or a salary? Twice the amount. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. We've run out of time. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Colleagues, submission number 77, invite Bridget Cairns and Linda Noakes from CLM. Welcome. And it's on page 154 of our papers. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, good morning. You might have seen Grant Benton was on the list, so I'm just putting in apologies for him. Unfortunately, his mother's passed away and he's in COVID isolation at the moment. So I'm one of the general managers for CLM and I'm based locally here in Palmerston North. So I'll hand over to Lyndon, our Lido facility manager.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. So our submission today is around about the Aquaplay. I don't know if you've all seen the Aquaplay at the Lido, which is a feature that we put in a few years ago. So at the moment we're in the stages of putting a new Aquaplay in, taking the old one out, putting a new one in, and it's given us an opportunity to look at putting some features around that Aquaplay that are more accessible for people. Obviously we get a lot of user groups through the Lido. Obviously one of them spoke this morning about the 50-metre pool, but that's just one. We also have a lot of groups from Choices, New Zealand, and also from colleges that come in, people in wheelchairs and that sort of thing. So we want to put some features in around the Aquaplay that they can use that necessarily they wouldn't be able to use otherwise because of the high platforms and that sort of thing. So yeah, obviously CLM and Kiwi2 Hydroslides are contributing a large amount of money, 500,000, and that's for the main Aquaplay. Hopefully you've seen a picture of it. It looks quite cool with the new colours and the 600-litre dumping bucket. And obviously what we're looking for is just a smaller contribution to add those water play toys and for plumbing and preparation and installation. So yeah, that's it really in a nutshell.
Great, thanks Lyndon and thank you Bridget. So can I just ask the question, probably to the officers as well, there has been some discussions with our infrastructure or Parks and Reserves people with this?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Lyndon, for bringing us the offer. We've just spent a fair bit of public money putting a facility into Memorial Park that doesn't cost anything for the community to get to. Can you just help us through the value proposition of putting public money into something that's behind a paywall for the same kind of service?
Sure. So obviously I understand, Memorial Park is free for users and it offers quite a unique experience, but obviously the Lido, again, that offers another level. We're getting these groups come through that wouldn't necessarily go to Memorial because we have the setup of the disabled change room and all the hoists and stuff there. So it's probably a little bit more accessible for a lot of these groups, whereas they wouldn't necessarily travel to Memorial to use those facilities. That's probably the main point.
Thanks. So it's principally an access
Yeah.
argument that you'd like us to be considering if we're
definitely.
looking at this.
Yeah, and I guess the opportunities come about because we're doing this redevelopment of the main aquaplay area, so it would be significantly more expensive to put these in separately. But because the redevelopment's going on and things are already being dug up, then that's where it's potentially a third of the cost that it would normally be to add these additional features.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Being new to council, I just want to get an understanding of when this aquaplay was first put in, was that something that council funded or was that something that CLM funded?
So the aquaplay and the slides were put in by a company called QE2 Hydroslides.
Yep.
And there was a tri-party agreement between CLM, QE2 Hydroslides and Palmerston North City Council. So the Palmerston North City Council contributed a sum of money for the preparation of the grounds and the pumps and that sort of thing. So yeah. that's how it
A
works.
significant investment came from CLM and QE2 Hydroslides. So the aquaplay essentially was paid for by CLM and the slides were predominantly funded by QE2 Hydroslides. And the aquaplay's got no additional charge to it to access, whereas the slides have a additional charge.
Appreciate that. And so, as you've just heard, we have community organisations who are struggling for funding. We've got to weigh up which groups we look at funding, and a commercial operator who's making, I assume, an annual profit. The value proposition has to be quite strong. So my question is this something that CLM and QE2 would look at doing if they didn't access council funding, or is this 100% reliant on us putting this in this year's budget?
It's something that we've reviewed, I guess, with the significant investment we're making. And I guess there is a perception that CLM makes a lot of money from the facilities, but I guess probably one thing with swimming pools is they're essentially a hole in the ground that you pour money into. They're incredibly expensive to operate, so often we do run at a loss. There have been years where we have run out of a loss, and obviously we're making continuous investments, so we're wanting to develop the facility, which is upgrading the aquaplay at the moment, but I guess also with coming off the back of the pandemic and everything that's kind of the challenges we had with people obviously not coming through the facilities, that financially that's not an additional expense that we can fund at this time, especially with, I guess wages makes up 50% of our core costs, and minimum wage has gone up 28% since we've had our last admission increase. So it is something that we're balancing, but as I say, we've committed to making sure we update the aquaplay, but the additional features is not where we're able to meet at the moment.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. Thanks for coming in to present. Just following up on Councillor Wood's questions, what you're proposing is that council funds kind of an upgrade to what you're doing already. So you'll be doing something. You're asking us to chip in a bit more.
Yes, so that aquaplay, the big platform area that you see in the images, that's what we're funding. That's absolutely going ahead. That's been ordered. It's the 6 smaller additional features that would be around the outside of that platform that would be more accessible, and I guess we can tack them on to the project, but yes, the 500,000 is committed. It's the additional features around the outside where people who can't access the platforms and get onto the slides, where there's an opportunity on that side. So it's more about that accessibility side and expanding.
Thank you. I suppose my other question is, you talked about wanting to develop the facility. I suppose my question is, why the focus on the aquaplay when we've heard today from people getting their feet cut on tiles? Why is this the focus of redevelopment?
So the aquaplay's had enough wear and tear over the years that it's due for an upgrade. So it's a priority to make sure with health and safety side that there aren't issues with the current aquaplay. So it's requiring an upgrade. So we've committed to that side of things. I guess our maintenance budget, I would say, across the facilities is pretty significant. We take care of all the day-to-day operations, which is the day-to-day repairs and maintenance. So we're constantly updating and making a lot of spend where people don't see any additional benefit to that spend, where something like an Aquaplay, people can see it and touch it and make use of that, and they can see something's happened, but a lot of the money we spend is on repairs and maintenance that people don't see. But I guess the challenge for us, and I did hear around the cut feet on tiles, is we have a pretty significant health and safety program, we have a significant repairs and maintenance program, but we do need people to tell us if there are those types of issues, because we deal with them as they come up and we report on them to council monthly.
Thank you.
Councillor Harper online.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Lyndon. My question's around the user groups and the demands that are coming through from the user groups. Is this, from the Aquaplay, is this user group more of a priority ahead of what the demand is for the 50-metre pool being covered? Just listening to community groups out there and their needs going forward. What are the priorities from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess our role is to manage the space that's available and all of the user groups, which there are significant numbers of users across the facilities, especially the Lido. We have a lot of casual swimmers, so it's a constant balance trying to make the space for everyone. You've got aqua aerobics, you've got swim school, which we have over 2,000 kids coming through each week with Learn to Swim. There's other programming. We've got, as I say, all our casual use through to our competitive swimmers. So it's not that anyone's not a priority. It's an ongoing challenge that we're constantly trying to make space of. And I guess the biggest challenge is we're talking about peak time. There's a lot of dead time during the day when the pools aren't being utilised and there's plenty of lane space, but obviously come 3:30 everyone's wanting to be there at the same time, and same in peak times on the weekend, so there's that constant challenge. And I guess the upgrades to the Aquaplay is that it gets a significant amount of use, and I guess some of the other challenges that we're looking at when we talk about the competitive swimming side of things, in terms of us funding a significant 50-metre pool up to FINA standards, that's just not realistic investment from our side. It's something that we would do in partnership with council and that we would look at if there's a project happening to contribute to, but as I say, it's not a priority, it's just what's realistic with funds and the sheer cost to create lane space, essentially.
So I'll just add too, so just putting some figures on the amount of people that we get through. So just in January alone, we had 47,000 people come through, and a lot of those were people using the Aquaplay slides and the leisure pools. And so a small percentage of them were lane swimmers. So obviously, you know, that's an area that we're always developing or trying to make, you know, people have a good experience at the Lido. And so, yeah, obviously, with that amount of people, we're always looking to upgrade the areas that they're using the most.
Great, thank you. Sorry, colleagues, that's we've run out of time again. A consistent theme this morning, but thanks Lyndon and Bridget. All right, to our Bunnythorpe friends, Joe Jameson, Flo and Ethel Gibson, welcome. And I believe we've got a PowerPoint.
I'll try and... Is it on? No, oh, there we go, big one. Good morning, Mayor Grant Smith, and thank you for chairing the meeting of this hearing today and for giving us the opportunity to speak to our submissions and to all those councillors present. My name is Flo Gibson, a resident of Bunnythorpe since 1978, and I'm being supported by Joe Jamieson, Chair of the current Bunnythorpe Community Committee, but currently focused on the maintenance of the new Bunnythorpe Community Centre. Thank you for reading our Bunnythorpe submissions, and as I said in our submission, I wish to reiterate. I hate saying this, but same old, beginning to sound like a cracked record, but it would be so nice to see some of the things that have appeared for a number of years actually being noted and acted upon in the not too distant future and being conveyed to the community at large.
Re the walking path, Stony Creek Road from Nathan Place to Pars Road and consideration from Pars Road to Sangster's Line as per our submission. This was previously submitted in 2020. It's 3 years ago now, and I have not seen a reference in the long-term plan unless I have missed it, which is quite possible. Particular to note, we'd like to bring your attention to page 156 of the annual plan document 2324, which states, footpath standards as per Institute of Public Works Engineering. My thoughts are, even if it was just a well-packed base course for the walkway, I'm talking about Stony Creek Road, it would be better than walking in often long grass that not only makes footwear very wet, but also wet long trousers, or even out on the seal, which is dangerous to both pedestrians and road users. Passed over to Jo.
Re the Bunnythorpe footpaths, the majority of these are in a very poor state, and most would be classified as fair to very poor. As per above note re PNC standards, these footpaths are Dixon's Line, Campbell Road, Baring Street, Raymond Street, and no doubt others in the village. It is therefore requested that priority be given to those adjacent to the hotel, the public toilets, the bakery, and the dairy. The tripping hazards, in fact, when a 79-year-old male stepped into the depression in the footpath adjacent to the grate outside our tavern and ended up running into the middle of the road. Fortunately, there was no vehicles coming along Dixon's Line at the time.
Raymond Street footpaths, flooding across this footpath from opposite the community centre to where the pathway goes down to the walkway nearby between Raymond Street and Baring Street. It is obvious that drainage of some sort needs to be considered due to the slope of the road across the grass verge to the footpath, and it can be quite deep at times if you're a regular walker, as often villages are.
And then we wanted to bring up the adult exercise equipment. This has been requested for just a one piece of equipment in 2018, 2019 and 2020, and again this year in 2023. PNCC, please note in the annual plan 2324, page 127, facility to increase physical fitness.
In reference to the Bunnythorpe School crossing and Baring Street generally, refer to the original submission and also annual plan 2324, page 37, item 22, physical deterrent, and that's installation of speed humps. And if the school have put in their own submission, we support this, but we're not sure whether they have. Walkway between Baring Street and Raymond Street. This has not been well cared for by the PNC contractors, but there are signs of some improvement of late. Current shrubs are very much past their best, rotting, falling over, and need replacing with smaller shrubs, but not as close to the footpath as previously. The corner of Dutton Street and Campbell's Road, while we are grateful for the deep open drain that was filled a few years ago, 2018, the grass is actually mown, but there are a small number of trees that are falling over, uprooted and generally very old. And our suggestion is perhaps this would be a good piece of land to plant community fruit trees. I'll do the photos shortly. Open drains as per our submission. We'd like to suggest to seriously consider covering in those drains, some of which have a lot of leaf collection and they never seem to get cleared or the drains never cleaned by PNCC. Dixon's Line poses a problem, particularly where cars park on both sides of the road on the grass verges, impeding the passage of traffic. Vehicles more often than not actually straddle the painted centre line. Also to note that there is a distinct dip in Dixon's Line between number 11 and number 17, which makes passing even more dangerous. The Bunnythorpe Gateway, see attachment, which I'll put on screen shortly. Can the Bunnythorpe community please be updated on when we can expect to see this project completed? And to note on page 128 of the annual plan 2324, it says PNCC maintains that they work closely with Rangatani o Manawatu to increase wider communities' understanding of Rangatani o Manawatu. And our comment is we'd be really pleased to see the finishing of the sculptures on the corner of Dutton Street and Campbell Road. This has been ongoing since 2019. Lighting, Nathan Place to Pars Road. And this is on Stony Creek Road. To reiterate, this has been requested in past submissions, and any date would be welcomed, please.
And speed signs in Bunnythorpe to be extended from the current position, particularly in Maple Street, to extend to the corner of Tenio Road. When there is a funeral or a burial at the Bunnythorpe Cemetery, the parked cars park either side of the carriageway, and it's hard for the other vehicles to pass. The cemetery is currently in a 100k zone.
Curb and channelling. As notified at submission 2 years ago, there was a real lack of curb and channelling, particularly along Dixon's line from Barring's Little Streets to Reed Main Street, and any update would be appreciated. The Bunnythorpe Cemetery, please refer to the plan on page 132. The BNCC provides cemetery services that are responsive to community needs. In a previous submission, it was suggested a toilet and seating at the cemetery, as some particularly elderly residents have spoken about. The public toilet is too far away. It is noted that the PNCC measures of success equal. Visits to the cemeteries are satisfied with services provided. Unfortunately, we don't agree in the case of the Bunnythorpe Cemetery. Bunnythorpe water supply. It is imperative that residents be involved with all aspects of PNCC's plans to rectify the current water and dirty water problems experienced by some residents. The Domain Board farmland, as we know it, which is between Stony Creek Road and through to Tutaki Road. It's actually number 699 Stony Creek Road. Written submission 2018, where it was requested that there be dialogue with the Bunnythorpe community as to the future plans for this unique heritage of Bunnythorpe. In days gone by, the funding from this land was used by the Domain Board for upkeep of the recreational land on the corner of Raymond Street and Dixon's Line, the then Bunnythorpe Public Hall, demolished in 2008, and the Bunnythorpe School, so the income was being put back into the community. On behalf of Bunnythorpe residents, Joe and I thank you all for your attention today and trust that we can have some definitive answers to all the submissions, both written and verbal. We'd also like to thank Councillor Pat Hancock for making time to take a walk around part of the village with some committee members to better understand our needs.
Thank you, Flo. I'll go to our Bunnythorpe councillor, Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Joe, Ethel and Flo. Really, I suppose I just really want to sort of get your understanding of your, or get an understanding of your expectation. Like, there is a long list of deficits within the Bunnythorpe community in terms of investment. Would it be helpful if council actually, I suppose, gave you an understanding of a prioritisation and programming of the remediation of all of those things?
Yes, it would. And so that we can convey that to the community. It would be wonderful.
Okay. And it's really about getting some visibility, some transparency over that work plan.
See, even with changing the speed limit in Maple Street, like I can leave the hospital at work and do 100k just about to home, and I'm in a residential area, and I'll can go do 100 past the cemetery and just spinning off at our gate doing 100k. And that's in a residential area down Maple Street. Yeah, the 50k changes just past our gate.
Great, look, it's really helpful, thank you.
Well, thank you, Flo. Thank you, Joe and Ethel. That's our time. Sorry to our other colleagues that are in the queue. And we have our final submission this morning. It's number 47, and it's from Brian Way. I invite Brian up. It's page 98, Te Aroara Manawatu Trust. Morning, Brian.
Morning, Grant. Morning, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. Some of you will know me as a former council officer, now spending a lot of time working on the Te Aroa Trail. Introduce the chair of the Te Aroha Manawatū Trust, Dave Grant, here to support me today. Just a bit of background, I need this, don't I? Te Aroha Manawatū Trust covers the area of the trail from Bulls to Levin, so 110 k's, passing through Manawatū District, Palmerston North and Horowhenua. So first of all, just on the screen there's the quick summary from the 1st of May this year, so at the start of this month, the registrations for Te Aroha users this year. So a total of roughly 2,500 people walking the trail in some form or other. A quarter of them are section hikers, 3/4 doing this whole 3,000 kilometre hike, 2/3 international hikers, and a third is Kiwis. That button. Can I let that go back?
I think you just haven't turned it on. Yeah, there you go. Now you
Right, first of all, I'd like to quickly thank City Council for the support they've given to the trail over the past few years. Notably, the support has included provision of accommodation and toilet out in Gordon Care Forest, which is a very popular facility. 1 day's walk, 32 kilometres from Palmerston North, well used this past season. And the toilet out there is obviously a very important facility where inviting people to camp and stay, providing toilet facilities is critical. There is significant signage around the city apart from the small signs that guide people through the city, the little chevrons. We have signs north and south of the city providing a map of the area so people can locate themselves, and the much photographed halfway sign on Backtrack, which everyone seems pleased to arrive at. And also the City Council's commitment to safety. This program, the stairs on the right of that picture, beside the bends at the start of Turitea Road to get hikers off that dangerous bit of road, put in a few years ago, and this past season, Council erected the warning signs for motorists to just warn them that there may be hikers on the road. Also, Manawatū District and Horowhenua District erected similar signs on their bits of road. The Te Aroha Manawatū Trust committee, just note they're not all about asking Council and DOC for contributions to support the trail, but we get out there and do a lot of work. We have a committee of 7 members doing a lot of planning and liaising with stakeholders. We fundraise for weed control, spraying gorse and blackberry, cutting and pasting gorse along the trail. We fundraise for trail furniture. We have a group of a dozen or more volunteers that support us on a regular basis where there's track work required. Keeping signage up to date and managing contractors when there's bigger jobs that we're coordinating. So installing signage is important. It's our friend Ian Argyle, the late Ian Argyle, and one of the tables that he installed last year. We've got 6 of these tables along the way that we've installed over the last couple of years, some on council land, some on dock land. Group of volunteers that helped us cut barberry on that bit of road, Greens Road. And gorse that we got some funding from E&M to spray blackberry in the bit of land just north of Bunnythorpe between Kairinga Bunnythorpe Road and Wars Road. So it's this, just moving on now to what's coming up. We note that Council have been working on a shared pathway from Bunnythorpe or Kung Fu Corner back to Palmerston North, and Manawatu doing the same in their section. So we know that there is design work underway for this shared pathway, and the first piece is going to be that Kairinga-Bunnythorpe Road towards the road section, where currently hikers have to cross two streams. Mangoni Stream, which is in flood, is impossible to cross, so it forces people out onto the very narrow Campbell Road. We just urge council to keep that program running, keep the budget in there, and keep council officers working on completing that piece of pathway. It's greatly enhanced the trail as they approach into Bunnythorpe. And so we've got, going from KB Road, heading north, you've got this bit of wasteland, goes down across Jacks Creek, across Mangoni Stream. The trail comes down, across some stepping stones there. And the plan is to have a walk-cycle bridge put across that stream just nearby the railway bridge, and shared paths going north and south from that bridge to get people through there safely. So we just urge council to keep that program in place and other programs that support active transport, not only for TA hikers obviously, but for all other users of the paths and walkways in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks, David. A number of questions. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Brian. Can I just ask what your understanding is of the timing of that section of trail through Bunnythorpe that you were just referring to?
I keep getting told it's next year.
And which year is that? Next financial year or next calendar year?
They have been working on, as I understand it, they have been working on plans for bridging that section and path through there. And so hopefully this 23-24 financial year, there's budget there.
Great, thanks.
Asking that budget stays there and the work.
And with your trust, has there been any conversations with the Bunnythorpe community? It was unfortunate they needed to dash out the door, but kind of is there conversation between Te Araroa Trust and the Bunnythorpe community about kind of working a path through?
When the path was put through there, Ian Argyle talked to all the residents who the path passed by. It goes behind Nathan Place as well, so in what land it was kind of used by the neighbours, by the residents of Nathan Place, down the back there towards the railway line was sort of their private land, but it's actually a public road. So he talked to all those people. We haven't talked to the community, the Bunnythorpe community group as such, and as they were talking, I was thinking maybe, and I think Dave noted down, we need to talk to them directly and get a bit more involved.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mickelard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Brian, others for the presentation. And thank you for the work that you do. Just wanted to ask a question in relation to your funding model, because I don't think that was clear for me in the submission, but I just want to get a clarification around funding model. I know that the council partially or in full funds a lot of these activities, but do you also receive money from other municipalities within the Manawatu or Ministry of Conservation? Or how does the funding model work?
We fundraise from gaming machine trusts. We get some funding from hiker donations, so we've got some funding for some work on the trail this year from hiker donations, which goes to the National Trust, and they dish that out to regional trusts. And council is supported, this council is supported with the building of that shelter in Gordon Keir Forest, the signage. Otherwise, it's mostly just using walkways that are provided anyway as part of the normal council business, so, and shared paths as normal council business. So we're just utilising what already exists, much the same with dock. We're utilising existing dock trails and a lot of the trail right through the country.
Okay, look, thank you, Brian, thank you, David, appreciate the work that you're doing, and apologies to other councillors in the queue there. That has completed our today's session, and we will adjourn the meeting until 9 a.m. on Wednesday. Now, if I could just ask the Deputy Mayor to perhaps close this session with a karakia, that would be appreciated.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor. Kia ora koutou. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia ki te here tangata. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao. Tūturu whakamaua kia tīna. Haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora.
Look, thank you, everybody, and appreciate everyone's attendance this morning. So, look, we're going to break for a quick break. We'll be back in this chamber